Hey everyone, welcome back to Rally Caps. It's a podcast for artists, entrepreneurs, and everybody in between. I'm Steven.
I'm Eric.
I'm Gene.
And this is...
Sorry.
we
have a guest.
Who is it? Who is it?
I ruined it.
Who is
Sorry.
it? Who is it?
Leave them guessing.
It's Jesse.
I thought he was going to say it.
I've never been here before. It's my first time.
Literally 20 minutes ago was his first time here.
I don't even go
We
here,
proved to screw it up every time, so it's mostly my fault.
Our fast friend, new friend, Jesse Green of Handcar Creative.
Yeah.
You guys go by Handcar Creative, Handcar Co?
Handcar.
Handcar.
Yeah.
Sick. Okay.
Pretty sick.
The co does we get confusion on that.
Okay.
It is our domain because that was all we could get.
Oh, .co.
And then so I made
Yeah.
our Instagram that because we also couldn't get just Handcar.
Okay.
But then people think it's, the 2008 and co that everybody added to everything. And
With a little
it's
tiny
like, I'm
tree
still
as
trying
the
to fight my
logo.
way out of that stigma,
Yeah.
but it's just Handcar is great.
Sick. Handcar. Amazing. You guys are a phenomenal, if I may say, Detroit-based creative agency. And we're going to get into all of the commercial work that you guys have done. You've been around for quite a while, have a really cool portfolio that we're going to unpack and dig into and just kind of hang, because as you already mentioned, this is your first time here and we're kind of just like getting to know each other a little bit and hang out. You guys met, Gene and Jesse, when and how? Remind me again?
We met February of 2020,
Yeah.
which is crazy. I think that was already 4 years ago. We both attended well, you should tell the story how we met.
Yeah, I'll tell it. I guess to put it in the Handcar timeline, like I had started kind of the early iterations of Handcar like 3 months prior to that, December of 2019 on accident. I can get into the history of that later, but Gene and I met at a commercial photographers conference out in Seattle. And we both, I don't believe we're talking to anyone else before we came upon each other. And then we just like stuck with each other for the rest of the weekend and
Perfect.
Introverts
became
unite.
fast friends. Yeah.
Love that.
Introvert's nightmare.
Yeah, and at that point too, at least the reason why I went was because I was still shooting like 30, 35 weddings a year at that point, but that's when I started shooting interior photography. And so I had this like really large curiosity of just generally the commercial world and how to approach it. And I had a lot of questions too. And that was the reason why I went. But what was the reason why you attended that workshop?
I was kind of in a similar space. I was heading out of weddings. 2020 was supposed to be my last year. Ended up not being because everything got pushed a couple years after that. But I was kind of heading to wind that down, even kind of early. I didn't know what Handcar, or it had no name at the time, was going to be at that time. So it was like I was still just focusing on my photography work. And if that worked out, then great type of deal. So I had gone just to like, I had been doing a lot of commercial work up until that point, probably like more so than a lot of the other people in the room. But I wanted to like learn from the two women who were teaching it, who had a much more like successful career in that path than I did, in like consistency and like being completely commercial forward. So I'd gone for that, and like the Handcar stuff was kind of just like not even a real thing at that point. So I was just trying to like edge up my commercial game because I was intentionally trying to get out of weddings at that point in time after 13 years. So
Very cool. 13 years in weddings.
yeah.
Whoa.
I shot my first wedding when I was 16.
Holy cow. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And then I was full-time in it by the time I was 17. I like quit my last job at that time. So I have not worked for anyone else since then. But
Wow.
That's wild.
yeah, very weird. Like it's a very weird path, but like the case of like the perfect storm, right? Because it was like, I discovered that I was like, okay, I was good at it with, my parents point and shoot, whatever. Had the perfect timing of like my first two clients were like high school senior photos, and it was just like friends of mine that were also the same age as me. So it was like, you seem like you know what you're doing with a camera. Like take our kids' photos. And then the first wedding was like a $400 wedding for like a family friend that had no
Nice.
money.
Of
And
course.
and I did like 5 the year after that and 25 the year after that.
Yep.
But like, it was the perfect thing of like, I kind of had the like business side of it figured out. Like that part kind of came naturally to me somewhat, even though I had no entrepreneurs in my family. I had nobody that I like looked at for that. So that part like kind of came natural, where I was like, I think I quicker than most like was like, oh, this could be something, versus just like I'm shooting photos. But yeah, I had that like added bonus of like, I had nothing to lose either. I lived at home.
Yeah.
I was in high school. Like if this didn't work out, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect time to do it.
I'll go
Really
put more
is.
shifts in at Target again. Like, it's fine. But so yeah, weird like timing. And like my last job was like with this awesome entrepreneur. I was like I was employee number 1 of like, it was 8 by the time I left, but like he gave me the final push where he was like, this is something you should go do it. I'm not firing you, but like, go do it basically and call me if you need anything. And that was like a really pivotal like moment for me. And like, and I did end up calling him later, and he like invested in my photo booth company that I started later on. And like really like cool, like people that helped kind of build that up. But then the fact that like my wife and I started dating sophomore year of high school too. So like she was there through that, all of that exact time too. So it was just like, life came very early where it was like full time in that. We got married at 19 and 20.
Yeah.
Had our first kid at 22. Wow. So like we kind of just like moved that timeline up.
Just started growing up earlier.
Yeah.
You're like, you know what?
Why not? We're here
I don't see
anyway.
Target as a future. I'm just going to do everything on my own.
Some days like pushing those carts sounds really nice.
For real.
I still say that where it's like when it gets in deep, I'm like, man, pushing those carts at Target would be just outside, you know?
And I'm sure that's why
Physical movement.
That's why it's Handcar now, is because of the cart.
It all goes back to that. Yeah,
Totally.
Hand cart.
Yeah.
Hand cart.
That's okay. That's so much really cool information all at once. That's insane.
Yeah, that informs the like rest of everything. That pivotal moment was like at 16, 17
Okay. Wow.
with like everything, like both the personal side of my life and the work side of my life, which is really weird.
I feel like that's really encouraging for anyone listening who is in high school right now.
Yeah.
It's never too early to just start doing it.
No, probably easier now than it was even then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's incredible. I have so many follow-up questions, but first and foremost, do you still photograph weddings this day?
Very, very seldomly. Okay. My like rule now is like family or friends that I want to do it.
Cool.
So I just shot one in Florida in January for like one of those. Basically, I'd shot their older daughter's wedding or her senior pictures as my like second client ever back then.
Whoa.
And then they had 2 other daughters. I shot all of their senior pictures, and then this was the second daughter's wedding. So I still have one daughter left to do, but we have a very clean handshake deal that like I'm seeing this through.
That's really special though. Those relationships.
It's
are
like
really
it's
cool.
that kind of stuff that's like fun. It doesn't feel like work. It's like I got to pick up a like awesome second shooter down there, and like was an incredible guy to hang out with too. So like it's fun stuff to. It's fun stuff to do.
Super cool.
So yeah, that's about it.
What was your last like full-time year as a wedding photographer then?
Probably 2020. A couple of them edged into 2022, but 2021 was probably like the most last. But yeah, those were all like 2020 postponements that just kept edging further and further out.
Yep. Yep. Oh, what a glorious time that was.
Yep.
Okay. That's awesome. I did not realize you had such a deep background in weddings. That's really cool.
That was it for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was really only the last like 5 years of that career that I was shifting into like editorial and commercial work. Cool. And then it kind of got to like a 50-50 point towards the end. And then my plan was, leading into 2020 was like to go totally commercial and like wind down the weddings. And then, the whole world blew up. So minor thing.
Minor thing. Yeah, this little blip in 2020. Was there something in particular that prompted you to start pursuing commercial work in tandem with weddings?
I feel like the first few opportunities I got to like dip into it was just things that kind of got offered to me, and then like I fell in love with that I could like bring the storytelling aspect of it over to that, and that was kind of the sector I got into. Was I wasn't doing like massive production work, but I was doing a lot of like editorial stuff for not like local magazines, but I can take you to the like story that kicked off the like editorial gig was like there's a men's brand out of Montreal called Frank and Oak. And they back in the day, like decided they wanted to do like a physical magazine called Oak Street Magazine. That was just like would be handed out in stores and be like a physical manifestation of their brand. But like editorial, like had stories written in it and everything. And they, in their inaugural issue, wanted to do a story about Detroit. And this was like probably 2013, 2014. So like Detroit was a even very different place then than it is now. But they contacted me, found my work from somewhere. And the like assignment they gave me was like, here's 5 business owners, artists, whatever. Basically, we just want you to go like profile them, like spend an hour with them, just like shoot them in their space, doing what they do. And I like fell in love, and that was really cool just because I loved meeting the people and like having a reason to meet the people and like shoot them in their space, take what I learned from weddings of like being able to create beautiful work no matter what the environment hands you, you know, like here is their apartment. Don't know what it looks like. Don't know how it is, but like you better, you know, take some good photos. So I loved that I could kind of merge those two worlds. And what I ended up doing is I basically like that went really well. And what was supposed to be like a 3 spread thing turned into like a 17 spread thing in the magazine just because they like wanted it to be a much bigger impact.
Whoa.
And I fell in love with that, essentially like that assignment. So I turned that assignment into like a personal project from there, basically. Cool. Whereas like I just started reaching out to other Detroit business owners, and I even did some here in Chicago too. I did like Mike Salvatore at Heritage Bikes.
Oh yeah.
And I did a few others because we were back and forth here a lot at the time. So I like reached out to a few other people here, and but I just made that assignment they had given me my own personal thing, and I like made a Tumblr blog separate from my wedding website.
When was the Heritage one?
Probably around that same time.
So like surely we saw all those images.
They didn't have any other locations at the time.
Yeah, it's when Heritage was blowing up.
Yeah.
So
it was like big. It was before they expanded into the space next door. It was like just one single like shotgun shop.
Guarantee. Yeah, I saw all that.
But like such good people, like so cool to like follow them and see their journey since then. And but yeah, so like that became a personal project and like ended up like kind of not blowing up on Tumblr, but like became a thing. And then like the, you know, classic what you want a personal project to turn into is then people start reaching out to you to do that same thing. Yep. So I started doing other stuff for like, again, like Detroit was very like in the interest eye at that time. I feel like, where it was like, what is this place? What's going on? There's like a lot of like national and international interest in like businesses and all of that. So like I started getting hired for national things about Detroit as the local that like they didn't have to fly somebody in basically. So it was like, I'd shoot features for like Bon Appetit magazine and Savour and like other stuff like that, where it was like similar like editorial profiles where it's like, go in these 17 restaurants. Some of them are like hip ones that people know and everybody's freaking out about. And some of them are like the barbecue place behind Bulletproof Glass. And it's like, go do a profile of these places and like shoot them as they are. And so, yeah, that was kind of that journey. And then I started doing, you know, commercial projects for like lifestyle brands and stuff. And, but yeah, I think to go back to your long roundabout initial question, like, I just fell in love with being able to do that, but not all being weddings, basically. And I think it was like my kids were starting to get older too. And like that's being gone every Saturday was not ideal. And like, you know, early on it was like Sunday, Monday being my weekend worked out really well because they weren't at school. But then when they're at school, you lost that, you know, that day for a weekend. So it was like, I knew I wanted to make some kind of step to go back to a more normal, you know, schedule.
How many kids do you have?
3. 9, 7, and 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good spread.
Yeah. It's wild times, but you know,
It's kind of blowing my mind how many similarities we have. Yeah.
how many you have
Mustache.
kids
We have
too?
4. Yeah. Stash. I'm just like looking in the mirror right now.
The stash, it creates more kids actually.
That's the secret sauce.
My wife very much disagrees with that.
My wife's down with it actually. She doesn't want it to go away.
Good for you.
Nice.
Man.
Yeah.
Lucky. Okay. So yeah, what I'm hearing is the growth of and the expansion into this new thing of you diversifying your skill set as an artist, as a creative entrepreneur was not one of you seeking it out, but one of it like an opportunity presenting itself, you capitalizing on that opportunity, allowing passion to involve that. What I'm wondering now, the storyteller in me and looking at yours is like, what's the conflict in that? Is COVID the conflict in the story? Like along getting to Sidecar? Like what is the thing that really shook it up?
Yeah, I think so. Like so the interesting thing is like across that 13-year career in photography, I had a couple other like side businesses in there too. I had a design firm I started with a friend that we ran for like 4 years as partners that didn't really ever get off the ground to have enough scale. And then we also like co-founded that photo booth company I mentioned, which was us buying I don't know if you ever heard of Smile Booth, that big, like
I think so.
huge brand. They're like the ones who first like interrupted the
wedding
photo booth space.
Okay.
They had like a clicker to like take the photos instead of waiting for a countdown. So we like, for this weird small 6-month period of time, they decided to sell their equipment to other people. And we like saw this opportunity. We're like, with me still shooting weddings at that time, me and that partner I had in the other business, we're like, oh, this could be cool. It could be like both for my weddings and for other ones. And the issue is like, we bought it, spent like 10 grand on this equipment. And then like, they realized the error of their ways shortly thereafter, that they had just created their competitors all across the country. And they just completely pulled all support for it, basically. So we had this like completely proprietary equipment that like, as the years went on and it got tired and like had been beat up from being dragged to weddings and stuff, like nobody wanted to support like the software was so.
That's a bummer.
Anyway, but like grew that to a point to, I ended up selling it to a competitor at the end, sold the brand and everything, and it's still running to this day, and he's crushing it and like traveling across the country doing events and stuff. But yeah, COVID like really was I guess where I was going with that is like also in there. My wife's an interior designer. We co-founded an interior design firm to like run all of her stuff through.
Sick.
We ran a bunch of Airbnbs. We had 8 different Airbnbs we did over a 5-year period.
Crazy.
But all of that leads to like Airbnb and photo was my career pre-COVID. We were doing super well on Airbnb. It was our fun money that we got to like. We did a gut renovation on our house in Detroit, like full historic renovation, like that. All that like bonus money is like what paid for all of that, and photography was just like our life. But COVID completely wiped that out. We lost like $45,000 in upcoming bookings in like a 36-hour period when the lockdown hit. Like just like you're just watching. It's like it's a very weird. It's a very weird thing because. I had felt like I'd even said to my wife at that time, like I'd felt like up until that point, life had not been easy, but it had always like worked out.
Yeah.
Like I had never had that thing where it was like, I'd never had major like money anxiety or like any of that stuff. And like that moment, like sitting on my bed in like March of 2020 and like watching that entire thing get wiped out, watching all of my weddings get wiped off the map, all that. So like that was I am the least anxious person on the planet, which bugs the crap out of my very anxious wife. Like, I can't relate at all. That was like the closest I've ever been to like, this may not work out. Like that was one of the, like, I'm a very optimistic, like I'll find a way through anything, whatever. And like that moment was like, this might not be okay. Like, so to answer like that, the impetus of that though was like I had started Handcar, or it didn't even have a name at that time. It was me and a friend, Doug, that I convinced to quit his job and come join me on this journey to support one client. Basically, it was a client opportunity that came to us in December of 2019 of running social for Chaco Footwear.
Sweet. Okay.
They had to let their social guy go, but it was like 3 weeks before Christmas, and they were like. A friend of mine was the director of marketing, and I had shot campaigns for them at this point. So I'd been around the brand, and then I was running social and content for a hotel in Detroit at that time. So I was like kind of in that mix a little bit. And yeah, the story, which I've told a million times, is like she called me like 3 weeks before Christmas, and she was like, "Hey, we just fired our social guy. Like, you seem like you know what you're doing with the hotel. Like, can you save us any chance?" And it was like. Yeah, like on paper I can, but like that was someone's job and I have a job. So like, when would you like me to, do that? So enter my friend Doug, convinced him to quit his job at a church where he was doing design and video and animation. And I was like, let's just be heads down on this and see what, like, I don't need the money. This was a surprise to me. We have like, it's a 3-month gig for like 6 months worth of money. Let's see if we can do something basically. Nice. And so we just did. We just like went heads down on it, like 60 hours a week, just like pouring into it. And like a few weeks into the project, they were basically like, this is working out pretty well. Like maybe we just won't hire anybody and just stick the contract with you guys.
Dang.
And so like, again, like had no plan. It was just like, I was renting a desk from a friend at that time. So I just like rented him another desk in that space. And like, it was just like, just kind of doing it. And like we were in charge of everything from like copywriting to, you know, content planning to like actual like community management, DMs, all of that stuff. So it was like, we'd work all day and like just be figuring it out. And then we'd be like in our own beds at night at our respective homes and like texting each other and be like, all right, man, you start at the bottom of the DMs, I'll start at the top and we'll meet in the middle. Like,
oh my God.
That kind of like, cause Chaco has such a fanatical brand that their inbox is just like flooded all the, like everybody's just so bought in.
Oh my gosh.
So that was what it was. And like, it was, so, you know, meet Gene in February, go to that conference, still don't really know what I'm doing. And then March hits, and you know, whole world is crashing down. That's our only client, you know, again, like still not like overly worried about that. Cause I didn't even know what it was. And, you know, it was going to be what it was going to be. But we were so terrified of like, they had furloughed like their entire staff from like 12 people down to 2 in their marketing department. We were like, obviously we're going to go to, but instead they just gave us everything that those people were doing. So we became like overnight, we just became, now we're their graphic designers. Now we're their video production agency. Now we're all that stuff. Like
you became Chaco overnight.
Overnight, literally.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like, we were charging hourly and they were just like tapping us in for literally anything that came up. Which like we were well positioned to do because we had like lived and breathed the brand for multiple months at that point. So we were like ready to go. And thankfully Doug, who was kind of on that journey with me, is such a talented, like multifaceted creative across many mediums that like he could just kind of dive in on any of that stuff. And I was just kind of like managing the relationship and managing the social side of things and all of that, but just like wild. And we went as far as we filmed, they were releasing a children's line of sandals. They were releasing slides that year. They're called Chillos. And it was like, it ultimately ended up being their biggest launch they'd ever had in the history of the company, like scale wise. But they had a children's line of it and they had no assets to support that launch whatsoever because like all productions had been canceled, everything. So like they literally shipped us a kiddie pool and a bunch of sandals. And I got my 2 kids at the time and my 3 nieces. And we filmed a full, like, beautiful commercial production in my backyard in like April or May of 2020 with a kiddie pool and, you know, sandals. And like, that was their national launch for those things. It was like literally like an Amazon pool and some sandals and like, here kids, like I'll start the hose.
And it had to have gone very well.
It went well. It was great. Yeah. And so like, that was it. And like, so yeah, history wise, like we did not have a name. So that was like March, April, May. I had this crazy opportunity for a building come up in Detroit. That was one of those, again, like that serendipitous thing where like we had sold a house in Traverse City that we ran as an Airbnb and was our second house. And it was like, I had money that I normally never would have had from like the equity on that. And like, this timing came up with this building right in our neighborhood that I was obsessed with, this old, it was a 1930s car wash garage that had just been totally renovated into like a finished space, like not a workshop.
Whoa.
So it had just been renovated to be a yoga studio and then COVID hit and decimated that. So now they're selling the building.
So it's like move-in ready.
Completely move-in ready.
What?
And from like a friend that we had leased units from before for our Airbnb properties. So it was like, had this very easy in, whatever. So that building popped up and like, again, had no name on what we were doing. Chaco was our only client. I was still shooting weddings, but I was like, yeah, let's buy that building. Like that's.
Oh, you bought the building.
Oh yeah, no, I bought the building. Yeah, no, I 100% bought the building.
That's incredible.
But yeah, it was like one of those things where it was like, we had a little bit of chunk of change we wouldn't have had. We got like a great deal on a land contract.
Yeah.
And like, it was the uncertainty of the market that nobody really knew what was going on. So I got a pretty good deal.
Got a great rate that time.
Yeah.
Right?
It was and it's a land contract and it's like only 9 years and then it's free and clear. And so it was like, sure, let's do this. But that's where the name came from, is it was historically a hand car wash garage. It was still painted with original graffiti on the outside that said hand car wash.
No way.
That's where the name came from.
Okay. Pretty sick.
Dang.
Pretty sick.
So but that was like, we didn't have another client until fall of 2020.
Okay.
It was just Chaco.
Okay.
for that entire time.
Wow. Was that nerve wracking, or was there such a high volume of work coming from
There's
them?
such a high volume that we weren't even thinking about it, other than like
probably.
we'd back up sometimes and be like, all of our eggs are in one basket. Like that's a little scary, but like it was so much volume and felt so good and was running so well that it was like, we also don't want to take our eyes off the prize either of like what's working here.
But you have such a diversified skill set between the two of you.
Yeah.
That you just do what you've already done. Your proof of concept is there in everything you do. And so it's just a matter of someone else reaching out.
Yeah, 100%.
And saying yes to that as well.
And that was literally what it was.
And that's how it compounded then, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think the second client was literally, I mean, we would do like, little productions here and there outside of them, but the second client was their director of marketing, leaving there, went freelance, amazing guy, Josh Wyken. He left there, went freelance, and was consulting for a brand. He gave us that brand as a client.
Wow.
And then he went to Madcap Coffee in Grand Rapids.
Is that how that happened?
Yeah. He became their director of marketing, and he gave us all that business for like 2 years.
Got it.
And yeah, to fast forward even further, how amazing he is and how like amazing relationships and like playing the long game is like, he then went from Madcap to Yeti. We didn't work on anything at Yeti because there was just like a bigger team and bigger, they already have their stuff locked in. But at the end of last year, he went to Rumpel out of Portland. And like a week or two into that project, he was like on the phone with us, and we've been having a blast with them too. So like,
oh my gosh,
that's amazing.
That's literally what, I mean, it was the same thing when I did weddings, but like relationship has been like, I don't have any great like outbound sales, plan. But like relationships and playing the long game and like just, treating people well and doing what you say you're going to do is literally everything. And like, and makes for like so much easier of a startup as we work with people on multiple brands too, of like, we've already got that instant buy-in where, especially if they're like, a higher up leader that they can say to the team that they're coming in on of like, please just trust me. Like these guys got it. Here's XYZ that we have done with them before.
Yep.
We're about to start a project with a cannabis brand right now that like same thing. The director of marketing was at Wolverine when we were working with them. And like, it's like, as he's talking to the people that work for him, he's like, it's going to be good. Like, just like, we got this, like, trust me, make the budget for this. Like, it's going to be great. So yeah, like those relationships are like it.
that is so powerful.
Yeah.
To have that like stamp of approval from
100%.
people that trust you, because it's the way that you're treating the people that are going to bat for you, and it's also the work that you're putting out also.
Yeah, and it's like, I think like, especially for me in an industry that I don't have experience in, like I have no agency experience. Nobody I've ever even hired since then has that agency experience. So like, we're flying blind in some ways. So like the relationships are what we've got to to lean on to.
For sure.
I think so many people are convinced that getting into commercial work or any of the facets of the stuff that you do, they need to be seeking out. They need to be pitching brands. They need to be doing X, Y, Z. And yeah, people will make YouTube videos and tutorials and all these things. This is how you get a brand. And it can be so much simpler than that.
Yeah.
And all the facets you're saying is like, get really good at a thing. Do spec work, say yes a lot, and like build relationships and then watch stuff come in.
Yep.
And keep working super hard for the people you do land so that they don't leave.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough thing. It's a tough business because especially in the market right now too, it's like sometimes they leave no matter how good you treat them too is the really like hard roller coaster ride of it is like, you can have nothing going wrong. You can be treating them very well, but like there's also just like, the constant ebb and flow, especially in the like social space that we're in of like, the question is always a lot, should it be in-house or out of house too? So we're like constantly going up against that battle as well of like, sometimes that's just somebody new comes in and that's the move they make is to bring it back in-house. And then the next person comes in and they send it back to an agency or whatever. So it's like, as much as you can get the buy-in and treat people well, that's all you can do.
100%. And going back to what you said too about like having the long view on a lot of this too, like, there's another way to get commercial work that isn't just maybe sending decks out to a bunch of different brands, but it also is, you've been in the industry for like 16 years now kind of thing. Like there is something to be said about just appreciating people as they come in and out of your life. a job could come through from someone you met 10 years ago. Like you never know where that source of work could come from. And it might feel sometimes like really, I don't know, kind of like you need to just be like getting something out there. Like you need to be putting gas on the fire. You need to be like doing this, that, the other, and like almost like feverishly getting things out to land that work. But then it also could just come from like out of the blue, like something that you never expected, a connection to so-and-so, and then suddenly it's a Chaco that just pops up.
Well, and the hard thing about that strategy is it feels good when it's going good.
Right.
Yeah.
When you don't have things going on, you're like, I'm a complete failure. I should have had a better outbound sales strategy. I should have been networking better. Like when it's going good, you're like, oh, this is the move. This is like, you just take care of people and they come around and whatever. But then like, you know, when things get really slow over the winter or whatever, you're like, I should have been build some other, you know, things. But it's finding that mix and like staying true to, you know, as cheesy as it is, like it really is staying true to yourself. Cause like it all ends up living and dying on me. So like if I'm not being me and doing something natural to me and like, you know, very early on, when we didn't really know what we were, there was a lot of that where like, you know, people were saying to me, you know, early employees, whatever, being like, we should make educational stuff, or we should, you know, you need to be out on LinkedIn more. You need to like, we should start a podcast for here. We should like whatever. And I was like, that's so not like naturally me like that. Like I'm kind of a quieter, you know, person. I'm not like out there on, you know, so I was like, that just feels wrong. It might help in the short term, but like I don't know that I can sustain that. But yeah, I think to your point of like, I think Eric, you had said like, you know, saying yes, like it's that catch-22 of like, you know, not being a jack of all trades and master of none or whatever. But I think it's finding that healthy balance of like saying yes or the like yes and of like, yes, I would love to handle that for you. That's not like our best thing, but like we have these friends over here that crush it at that. We would love to like, I'm not trying to skim money off of that, you know, them to add to your bill or whatever, but like, I just like, I want to set you up really well with that. And I think the other like, I guess sales tactic or like relationship tactic I do with a lot of people is like, our like retainers cost a lot of money. Like it's like not every brand can work with us. We don't work with a lot of like, we don't really have a lot of Detroit clients either because it's like we don't have like we turn down like brick and mortar work. It's always like e-com direct to consumer brands are like what can afford like the type of work that we're doing.
Sure.
But early on, like that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people of like signing up for that for 6 months or a year or whatever to like dive into this really deep relationship. It's like that's the thing I always say too is like when I'm in those conversations, it's either the thing of like, but like, and I did this back when I did weddings too, but it's always like, don't worry about it right now. Like I don't have anything to slide across the table at you. I don't have like, that was my like, in every wedding meeting, it was always that same thing where it was like, I never wanted to sign a contract at the table. If I was like at a coffee shop with them, I was always like, let's just like go home, think about it, talk about it. Like I'll follow up. We'll settle it, you know, later. And I've like carried that same thought into this where it's like, you know, obviously there's some degree of like I am a like follow-up master, but I'm not like we got to sign this right now. And it's like my thing that I always say to people, especially if they're worried about like biting off too much at the forefront is like, let's just do something. Like, let us send us your product. We'll get a little something in the studio. Like, let's do a little studio shoot. We don't need to talk about social right now if that's feeling scary to you right now. Like, bigger agencies will always be like only the big thing or nothing. Like, they're not gonna like do any you know, the small bites to get up to it. But like that's always my thing is like, let's just do something. Like, we've got plenty that we can do. We've got plenty that we can offer. You've got this. You have this, you know, quarterly report you need to like throw out there. Like, let me toss that over to our designer. Just give us the outline for that. Like, let's just do something. We'll just do a little something and you can see how this goes and how we flow together. And like, it's yeah. So I think that like, it's the yes and, or the like, just being willing to like, not stretch outside of what your capabilities are, but like serve them the best that you can, even if it's in smaller pieces.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there any brands that you're currently working with that started that way?
I think, yeah, one of the bigger ones this is kind of that way. Grayson Clothiers is a brand we work with. They're a golf and like lifestyle apparel brand kind of across all sports. headquartered in Detroit, but nationwide. They have a ton of huge names like on their roster as like sponsored athletes. And they actually do something really unique that like they, versus their athletes being sponsored, they actually like let them invest in the company instead. So like all of their athletes are like owners in the company too. Kind of a weird like way that they do it. But this is kind of along those lines in that they came to us or we kind of connected on social first. Worked with them for about 6 months on social. It just didn't work. We weren't well aligned for like that side of the partnership. They weren't able to like move as get ahead as much as they wanted to with the way their internal like kind of thought processes worked, where like we were kind of always grasping for straws and they didn't have enough info or time to give us stuff. And we like felt empathy for that too. Like we saw that like you've run this brand solo in-house, you know, up until this point. Now you're like needing to like forecast information to an outside partner to let them run. And like, you don't have time to do that. And we'd kind of even like established that at the beginning of the relationship too, where they were like, I don't know if this is going to work. And it was one of those things where we're like, well, let's try it. Let's see. But long story short, like social didn't work. But what part we found in that process is we completely revamped all of their studio photography. Cool. We had started supporting on smaller things and taking on more things. And up until that point, we hadn't really done any like PDP on white photos. That wasn't really our thing, but like we found a way to like kind of do that in a better way for them and have like more kind of, fashion forward kind of look into the style and lighting and all of that stuff. So we kind of like reinvented the wheel on some of that stuff alongside their internal creative team. And that's been great. So now we're just like their sole studio photographers across everything from PDP to detail shots to like in studio with models for their seasonal drops and all of that stuff. But it was like, it's goes along those lines of like, this thing that is the main thing we offer doesn't have to be everything for everyone. And so like for them, like our photo and in-house studio offerings and the fact that we're right down the street from them for bringing clothing over and like all that stuff, like that's what made the sense. But it was being willing to not throw away the relationship and the process from the retainer they signed on for. Yeah. It was like, cause that retainer was, a year long and we cut it short at 6 months, but like everybody at the end of it was just like, hey, that didn't work out. That wasn't the thing that worked, best for your brand. But like this thing's working really well over here. Let's double down on that. So like, I think like not everybody would have been as level headed about like that divorce of that service to like, salvage that into something which is now more and better and more like profitable and like, feels better for everyone involved. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but like there's so much crossover of like my wedding world to what I do now that like my mantras and like way of doing things is exactly the same, just in a different package.
That's incredible. Can you walk us through the progression and you kind of touched on it earlier too, but you shot weddings really early on, and what you likely learned was how to be a business owner, how to do it yourself. And now you've kind of gone in a different direction where you're no longer like a freelancer or working by yourself. But in a lot of ways, it's a kind of a corporate job again. Like you're kind of working as an owner, a creative director, but managing a huge team now. So what does that look like even from the original car wash building, which you guys are no longer in, but now kind of transitioning from you doing all the work to now kind of delegating and managing? What's that journey look like?
Yeah, it's a weird one. We have 7 people on the team now. We had kind of maxed out at 10 and then have kind of leveled off where we're at right now currently. It's a weird thing because it's the first, the thing I always say is like, I never had, because my like career journey started so early too, I never even worked somewhere else with any corporate structure. It was like the last time I worked somewhere else was a startup when I was 17. And then I've never worked for anyone else since then. So like I was flying blind, not only on the agency side, but also just on the like corporate structure side of how you run things. So, getting benefits, getting payroll, getting, anything that's insurance, anything that like supports that has all been new in the last 4.5 years. And so it's been, I feel like I've gotten an MBA without paying for it. But I think the cool thing is that I've like loved about it is like, it's weird that you can be as proud for work that like you as a agency do as I was for like something I personally put out as a photography project. Like I can feel that same exact sense of pride for something that Jen, our photographer, shoots in the studio and we deliver to the client. It goes off well and performs well on social. Like there's no difference between that like pride, even though it like was a trickle down effect from like my leadership and not, you know, and her artistry and all of that stuff kind of coming together. So that like that journey has been not without hurdles. And I think I was not, there's still a lot I have to learn as a leader and as a, I think there's a lot of stuff I did really poorly in the beginning. And, but I think I've come a long way in like understanding people, being people first has been like my biggest thing is like, and that was like what I learned from that mentor I had at that last company I worked for was like, how can I always be like helping guide you to your next step or opening up a door for your next step, whether it's here or not, whether it's in this building or not. Like, so the like, what was the original question?
Just like the progression of you basically working for yourself.
Yeah.
And your own projects to now like owning a company and managing people. And even like, I guess like the question on top of that is where do you see Handcar next? Like your role in it.
Yeah.
But also maybe the clientele you want to work with, or when you think about like longevity, right? Like longevity, whether it's as an artist or as a business owner, actually employing people, like 10 years, 20 years from now, what are you envisioning for Handcar?
I think the benefit of where we are now versus even where we were a couple years ago is I was even a year ago, I was so much more in the weeds than I am right now. I still very much am. Like I'm still, you know, chief firefighter of like putting out any, you know, anything that pops up from a client to internally or whatever. Like I think that's always going to be my role in some way. That's what, you know, people look to the leader to do. But I think like we have reached a point that I can like step outside of it a little bit, which was what was killing us for so long. And I think like a big mistake I made was I was so focused on the people on our team and hedging up, making their lives easier of like, oh, you're stressed out. Okay. Let me, you know, hire this freelance production assistant to like help with this or whatever, which is all like great and valid and like correct. But I never helped myself anywhere in there of like, hey, what are the things on my plate that are really stupid that I'm doing? Like, what are the things that are taking away from me making relationships or me making whatever? And like, so I spent probably 3+ years not helping myself at all. Which I think is right and wrong. I think there's some parts of it, but like we ultimately moved, Patrick, who was on our team, got hired on as a social strategist, and found out, you know, similarly that wasn't the best fit for his skill set either. But that he was incredibly detailed, super creative. And like I identified in him, I was like, you would be a really good like producer. Like you get the details, you care about people, you can like see beyond people and see how to take care of them and like all of that stuff. And so I moved him over to be a producer on our team, which wasn't a role we had ever had before, but it was like kind of started as like almost for the first few months was almost like my assistant in some ways, where it was like, let's just dig in on like the crap I've been slogging through of like our website we've been working on for a year that still hasn't launched. And like are these like creative projects or processes or whatever. So it's like, let's dig out of this first. And then now finally we've reached a point where like he's really in his role. But that's been an absolute game changer for my life and my ability to lead and my ability to not be, and this is something I'm still working on, is like not tying my like productivity to me sitting at my desk plunking something all day, which I'm still terribly bad at. I'm still at my desk most of the day and I don't necessarily always need to be. But I think he's opened me up that I can like go have conversations. I can go feel like they just like relaunched that like creative mornings program back in Detroit again. And like, it's like I can go out and like spend 2 hours networking at something and not feel like that's the wrong move for the business is me being away or me not being able to answer or whatever, or even something, you know, like this today, like that, this was, you know, a goal I established at the beginning of the year is like, now that I have a little bit more breathing room, like being out there more and being, I did a podcast, first one in a couple years, like a month ago. And we like actually got a very promising lead from that like, which I was not expecting. Like I didn't do it. It was not, you know, I don't even know how it happened, but like, it's something that like is most likely going to turn into a very strong project for us because of that. So it was like, you get those wins where you're like, I do need, like, this is what my role needs to be, is like, I really shouldn't be at a computer most of the time, in all honesty. And like the size, we battle against the size that we are, though, is the problem. And like I say that all the time, is like, if we had 15 or 20 people, I think I would really be able to truly move into that like proper role. But we're in that like exact wrong middle where it's like, we're too small that I still need to like, I don't have like managers of a lot of our other things. We have me over our creative side of the business. Then I have Mel, who's just like the badass over the like strategy, social side of our business. But there's not another creative director or an art director or whatever like that. Everybody kind of like owns their own little silos, which makes the involvement a lot higher. But it's like, if we had that like slight more scale, I think I'd be in that like true place where I could be out there making like the very best next moves. But I'm kind of just like in that middle ground where I'm having to straddle doing the work and, you know, on the business versus in the business. Classic conversation.
Do you want to be there then?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. I think like that. I feel good when I'm in. The more that I let go, the more that I relinquish, the better I feel in some ways.
Okay.
I had a very like eye-opening conversation with a friend last winter that my buddy Ian, that I've known and like worked around for more than a decade now, but he owned this incredible animation studio in Detroit, and they actually got acquired by Duolingo to become Duolingo's in-house animation department, basically.
Whoa. Wow.
And they let them keep their agency in Detroit, and they let them like keep everything there. And
oh my goodness.
Incredible journey. But like I was having coffee with him, and he like really struck a chord with me because he was like, dude, because I was asking like how it's been since he like got acquired and they had to get folded in, different ways of doing things. And he was like, it's such a trip in your like mentality, or like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but it's like, it's such a trip in like stepping around yourself. He's like, the more I get out of the way, the stronger the business goes. He's like, the more that I just like shut up and like let people win at the things that they're good at and the reason I hired them for, he's like, oh, look, you know, revenue's up. Like that process moves a lot smoother.
Yeah.
That, like, and like, I think that was a big eye-opening thing for me. And like, again, like, don't always necessarily have the scale to just like fully like follow that advice, where it's like, you know, I don't have, you know, a executive level person at every turn that can like guide that ship necessarily. But like, as much as I can, you know, step out of the way where I can, I think is a really strong thing. And like, and it lets me shine in like what a leader needs to be, which is like the definitive answer, the like quick thinking, the like where somebody can bring this to me and be like, hey, here's the problem. Here's X, Y, Z. Yeah. And, you know, in a 5-minute span, I can be like, all right, just do this and do this. And like, don't talk about it anymore. Like, you know, like go just
Chief firefighter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, so I think like, I feel good when I'm doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel good when like, when we're doing a bigger picture strategy thing, like we'll do go-to-market strategy for a client's product. Yeah. And it's like, I bring a lot of value to that table. I don't necessarily need to like be the one running the project behind the scenes and putting all the details into ClickUp and like running that show. But like, I can sit at that conference table and like bring a lot of value to like, how does this get carried out? Who's doing what? How's this, you know, doing? And then like break, you guys go. So I think, long story short, like I think that's the goal, is to like keep moving into that like true form and like having really great people. We have such an incredible team of amazing people from so many different backgrounds. But I think getting it to a scale that like feels like some of those things can move forward without me is a big goal for sure.
Oh, that's huge. What is the, on that note, what does that hiring process look like for you then? Is it like referrals based off of people that you know? Are you posting job listings? Like, how do you get people in that you feel like would be a good addition to an already amazing team?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. We have a weird, I say this all the time, like we have a very weird crew in that like none of our people have agency experience. Okay. The creative side of the business is it's harder and it's easier to hire for. It's easier because it's harder just because like to find the right like culture fit, and like also it's took forever for us. Jen, our photographer, has been with us for like 2+ years. And she was the first one past me and Doug that was shooting anything. It used to be Doug and I tag teaming stuff in our studio. So she was the first like dedicated photographer we hired. That hiring process took like 6 months though, because for photography, especially finding somebody that has commercial experience that wants to work in-house somewhere is like a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of people that are killer at studio work, commercial work, product-based work that also want a day job basically.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that was like a relational one where it was like, I knew of her. She worked at Shinola, which is in Detroit. She had been working there for like 5 or 6 years, shooting all their watches, doing all their campaigns.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, that one was like a sideline conversation where it was like,
Come over.
come on over here. And she's so incredible, so talented, so versatile, like across what she can shoot. But the great thing on the creative side is like, once you do have them, like the startup time is nothing,
right?
Because it's just, they know what to do and they're just doing it within your, system, whatever. Whereas like on our social and strategy side, it's a lot longer of like a ramp up period with how you can't necessarily dive in, and they, if they're running the relationship with the client, then that's a whole, process, whatever. So it's been a mix of both. Like I've definitely gone I've hired some friends. I've hired early, we've got, Patrick, who I mentioned, is, a longtime friend of mine, Spencer, that runs he's our content creation lead, does all of our short form video on TikTok and Instagram. He's been he was a friend in Traverse City when we had our house there.
Okay. And
he moved down to Detroit and has been working with us for 2+ years. So it's like, it's a little mix of that and a mix of open market stuff. But it's like, it's always gone back to like, are you a culture fit more than like skill set?
Totally.
Cause like most of Spencer was a barista for like 13 years before he came to us. Patrick was a pastor. We have Mel, who runs the whole of strategy, was in retail management at a high level for a long time. So it's like nobody really had experience in what they were doing other than the creatives. And we've kind of just like formed that, which has been easier in some cases and harder in other. You take that balance with what it is, but I think with how small we are, like culture has been everything. Of like, do you just fit into like, because we're hanging out all the time, like we're just together, as any working relationship is. Like you have to like actually like being around each other. And like we've very intentionally done like all do you guys know anything about that?
I heard, chef.
Has this ever come up anywhere around here? But I think like, and we've intentionally hired only locally so far too, which is like a decision. Not, we have a completely hybrid like work environment. Nobody, has to come in at any given time. But we've done that intentionally of like same thing where it's like when we're so small, like it just feels like an extra hoop to jump through to like tie somebody into a video meeting or like set, all this stuff. Like there's talent everywhere and we live in a great time that we can do that. But like, I'll cross that bridge when we're at like 15 people or 20 people. Like right now it's just like, why do I want to, set up that whole extra scenario just for you to work from Utah? Like,
right.
And like once they're in and they're great, like I said, like anybody on our team knows that they can work from anywhere at any time and go on a 3-week trip and do whatever, however your work gets done, that's fine. But it's just like, as far as like actual home base, it's just with how small we are, it's just made sense to stick with that.
Absolutely.
I also want to put a spotlight on Detroit because I think some people are probably asking like, why Detroit? When I lived in Michigan, going to Michigan State and living in Grand Rapids,
I kind of forgot that.
Yeah. What I quickly realized was there's an immense level of pride around specifically Detroit. And I didn't really understand it when I first moved there. And as I began to frequent the city more, I began to see what people were talking about because kind of like Chicago, there's a culture of specifically about the people there that make it very attractive. It has this like gravity about it. But can you share with us like a little bit about like how Detroit, even though you don't have necessarily your clientele there like in that city anymore, how it's informed your business and shaped not just the culture of your team, but like there's like a chip on the shoulder kind of mentality 100%. That people in Detroit have, which I do love that too. Like people are such hard workers there. And like, how has that shaped Handcar?
Yeah, I think it's everything. It's everything to me personally, and it's everything like, inherently becomes everything to the business. And like, I love that so much about, like I said, like, to spotlight Chicago for a second in my spotlight on Detroit. Like that's what I love so much about here. And like I said, when I had my photo booth company, this was like a second market for us. So like my wife and I love this city so much. We almost moved here a couple times. Like, and there's so much crossover, I feel like, of like the people are just like good and hardworking and like actually kind and like respectful and will say what's up to you on an elevator or in a sidewalk. Or so like there's a lot of amazing crossover there that like even us being back here this weekend has felt so like home in that too. But yeah, Detroit is everything. Like I mean, it's always been baked into. We've lived in the city for 10 years now, and like we both grew up in the suburbs of Detroit. And it was everything for all of my businesses. Like I've built them all there. Even when we lived far outside of the city, I still kept my office there. And that was very intentional for like the type of work I wanted to be doing and who I wanted to be working with. But I think like, yeah, it goes back to just like people are everything. I think like Detroit is so good at lifting each other up and like, and that's my personal like thing and everything is just like, cool. How can I help you get there? Like, what do you need? How can this be easier for you? Who can I introduce you to? Whatever. And like, I think Detroit, that's just like inherently built in. And just like just the vibe of the city, vibe wise of like spaces and like our office is an incredible, like just inspirational. We moved out of that garage, which was an incredible place to work. And now we work in a 1930s office that has all the original walls and doors. And we did a full renovation on it and everything too. So it's like, I'm very like driven by like space to like be productive, I think. And Detroit just has so many great spaces and filled with such great people that just genuinely care. So yeah, even though we have one Detroit client, we have a nonprofit in Detroit called the Downtown Boxing Gym that we run all their social and marketing for, which has been great. They're new for this year and it's been fun to have like a tie back. Like they're literally 2 turns down the street from us. So like we can run over there and immerse ourselves in it a little bit more. But I think it's like informed who the people that work on our team are and like the mantra and like care we take to our work and the like willingness to like grit your teeth and get into it a little bit. I think it's just, it's less like a out loud talked about thing and more of just like that inherent built in, like, no, we're just going to like do it and we're going to get it done and we're going to like do what we say we're going to do. And we're going to, do it as nimble as possible. And like extract as much value out of this production as we possibly can to serve you. I think it's like that. It's that servant, mindset a little bit. That's just kind of like baked into the culture of the city. So it's just like, it's never been a second guess of like where we'd be or what we do. Like we love where we live. We love where we get to like operate our business out of. We love that they're both in the same place. And like, there's that crossover of friends and coworkers and like, it's all just kind of in one spot. That I'm sure you guys kind of like feel that here too of like you can't be like living and working in the same community. Like there's literally like, there's nothing better than that. Even if your work, like I said, is not like directly serving people where you're at, but like doing the work and getting it done from that spot is like, you can't beat that.
Sorry about your Lions.
I was sad. I was actually sad.
Pain.
It was sad.
That was, so we really, and my wife and I became true bandwagon fans this year. But it was at the beginning of the year though. It wasn't like at the playoff run.
Yeah.
So like,
but like you don't have time to cheer for them all the time if they suck.
no, it
Sorry,
was
the Lions.
I've always loved like going to see live sports, but like have never been like a sports guy. But we got in deep this year. Callie, my wife, even more so than me in that
Really?
like, she started wanting to watch every NFL game that was on.
Oh, wow.
Like, if there was something on, like we'd be like getting in bed at night. She's like, let's go.
Why is it not already on?
Why is it not on the
Yeah,
TV?
come on.
I don't know what you're not getting about this. And so that was rough. Our 9-year-old got super into it too.
Oh,
Like,
no.
he was crying when they were like, he like left the room before the game even ended. And like, it was good learning lessons, good learning moments.
We've all been there.
This year's our year though. So
Okay.
sorry to say.
Yeah.
I did
In
see
golf, we trust.
that the animation you guys made about, like it was like the H with
We
the
turned-
line.
Oh,
I was
yeah,
like, that's
that was
actually
sick.
so sick.
Well, it was so cool. Cause like, I think that was, it was really going back to like Detroit. It was really cool for the whole city to be able to rally behind something. Because it's been a while since like any of our teams made a good run. Tigers had a good run in like 2016 or something.
Red Wings
with
has been a while
Verlander.
too.
Red Wings has been forever.
Yeah.
I was like, I was a kid when the Pistons made their back-to-back championship runs, and like
Ben Wallace.
But I was just at a game the other day that they honored. It was the 20-year anniversary of the 2004
Oh, was it
run, and
really?
all the team was there, which is sweet.
Gosh, that's cool.
But like that was my dad and I watched a ton of games growing up for that. But it was really cool for this Lions run because as they got closer and closer to like the playoffs, I had actually said to Callie, I was like, man, I feel like more businesses need to be like throwing up banners and like buying in, and like I was kind of bummed that like it seemed like nobody was jumping on it.
Yeah.
And then like as soon as we hit that playoffs, it was just like flags are flying, like front business facades are painted.
That's awesome.
Like all the downtown buildings got lit up in blue with their like illumination on their roof lights and stuff.
There's nothing else like it.
It was so great. And yeah, it was pain at the end.
Yeah, it was so cool
to be like 20 minutes away from the Super Bowl. Is like I wish they would have honestly wish they would have lost in an earlier round. Would have hurt less. But
it was so cool to see that first home playoff game.
Yeah.
Like how electric Ford Field looked. It
Crazy.
just looked absolutely
It was like
insane.
the nation's team. Like everyone was rooting for Detroit.
Well, it's like how can you not get behind Dan Campbell?
Yeah.
Like,
The best. Yeah.
Like it's wild. And like they even had the playoff game that was away. They opened up Ford Field so that everybody could go still watch the game from there. And it was like just as loud as an actual game. Like they had screens on the field and like sold it out. Like,
oh my gosh.
Just for people to watch it on a TV at the stadium.
Yeah. Steven's a huge Dan Campbell guy.
Incredible.
So.
He's my favorite comedian.
Can't get enough of his jokes.
Can't get enough of that guy. All the classics. Yeah.
You know the one.
Yeah.
Sports. You know me. That was always my line before this season. I was like, sports ball. Like
Sports.
That's my current line. How did you know?
Yeah. But Lions are all I've got now.
Wow. Well, best of luck on the upcoming season.
Thank you.
It's very exciting.
I've got a lot riding on it.
Yeah. I'll see you on the field.
Personally.
I am curious to hear a little bit more about kind of like the future of Handcar. We've already alluded to, your hopes and dreams for expanding the team and your role specifically, how that will evolve. What do you think like the next steps are in like the immediate future for Handcar in 2024, in years beyond? Because you also just mentioned that you guys, had to leave your first space to a new one because of an expanding team and just needing more room to shoot and to plan and to create. What do you think the next steps will be for Handcar?
Yeah, I think we're like space-wise, we're like well positioned to grow without needing to move again, which is nice. We have like 4,500 square feet. That includes our studio and our office and like a basement for storage and stuff too, which is great. So we're well positioned there. I think like, dreams wise is like, we want to keep growing the production side of what we do. That side of things has more of a like on the social side, which we didn't super dive into. Like we only do organic social, we don't do paid. So we do an incredible job at that. It's very community oriented. It's very like trying to get consumers to like buy in for the long term. But on the flip side, that's really hard to show the value of, because it's not so numbers driven. We're not sitting here saying we're going to grow your followers by 10,000. It's like, no, we're going to have the followers you have.
Feeling.
It's like, it's just vibes. It's the vibes.
We got great
The vibes are going to be on point. Your sales, I don't know how much that's going to change, but the vibes and like the long-term buy-in is going to be just flawless.
And they just throw money at you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, but like, so that's the hard thing in being on the organic social side, but like we do such an incredible job and we have such long-term relationships on that side because we do get that and we do cultivate the story out of these brands that we work with. But the production side is a lot easier to sell, or not even easier to sell, but easier to like show the value of. So I want to keep growing that. I want to bring more. We do a lot of we'll do full scale video production work, but we don't have anybody in house that does that. So we're like scaling up freelance teams and we're producing it. But I would like to have some video people outside of our short form guy in house so that we can act more kind of nimbly and quick on that stuff. And then on the strategy side, like we want to grow beyond, we do a lot of one-off projects for, like I mentioned, like go-to-market strategy, brand identity, all of that stuff. I want to keep growing that stuff to be where we can do more ad hoc projects that aren't necessarily like needing a long-term retainer buy-in. And just like growing the scale around that stuff. More of the same thing, but in kind of an expanded fashion.
There's more diversification within the.
Yeah, like we don't want to go too wide outside of our lane that we're not functioning in that. But I think like serving people at a high level has always been like our thing has always been like, yeah, we can do that too, as long as we can do it at like a high level that we feel good about. So yeah, that's kind of the dream is keep growing it a little bit, keep it in a place that's like sustainable through the ebbs and flows of, the agency world. I'm a completely different person than I was 4 years ago when this started, and the skill sets that I have, and I still have a massive amount to learn, not only about the industry, but just about being a leader. But I think what I look forward to is like having more people along for the ride that are also pushing it forward and not just doing the work, but like are dreaming kind of with me on what that next kind of iteration looks like. I think is a big thing that has been kind of missing from the journey a little bit, is like we've hired a bunch of people that have like been incredible and have built the foundation and built all of our systems. And we're so much more of a well-oiled machine than we were a couple of years ago. But like finding the scale so that we can hire people that can be the dreamers and not directly tied to client work, I think is like when that next rocket ship takes off. But it's the chicken and the egg thing of like getting the work to have the money to do that is the always impossible, seemingly impossible kind of roller coaster ride of that.
Yeah. And to get there, you have to do the same straddling of both sides that you've been doing.
You need the money to get there, but you don't have the money if you don't have the people, it's great.
Go
so
around
it's the
all
thing
day.
that, rattle around in here all day.
Sick.
Dang. This has been a very lovely conversation, I gotta say. Like,
Same. I'm having a great time.
This has been really fun. I mean, we did not. You guys obviously had known each other, met 4 years ago, but it's just been very fun getting to like explore all this stuff and learn so much about you and from you. And all this.
I'm just thankful to be in the space. I mean, you guys are doing such incredible things here, and it's been a blast watching and listening to what you've built. I actually didn't come for the conversation at all. I was just hoping to get a pre-screening of the Joe Greer documentary. But this is cool that like this got to happen too. If you have that like queued up in another room to catch
It's
that,
not an SSD for you to take back. Yeah.
Sweet. This has been nice too. This has been really nice.
It's actually on a VHS that will self-destruct after you finish watching it. So.
Awesome. I
Good
can't
luck
wait.
finding a VHS player.
We have one in here.
Literally right back there.
I'm gonna sit, crisscross applesauce on the floor and just watch it in front of the VHS.
We'll have a monitor
The
with
tube
you.
TV.
They'll be just
Yeah.
making sure, and then they'll see as soon as you're done, they're like, okay, eject, burn.
He's away.
Done.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I came for. But this has been really nice also.
Good. Good to hear.
That we totally met expectations.
Yeah, thank
that's
you.
amazing.
Well, yeah, it's not often we have like whenever we have a guest, a lot of time it's a solopreneur. It's a kind of a solo creative, and so to have that next level and that insight is super insightful, really interesting, especially since you came from that background.
Yeah.
The solo thing.
Yeah, it's been a weird ride.
Yeah.
It's a wild place to be. And I say all the time that like I didn't mean to do this.
Right.
This is the funny thing.
Just seems like that's so many people's stories.
Yeah, like it was
business.
it was the fact that I said yes instead of saying no. And it's that's what separates an entrepreneur from somebody that works a 9 to 5, which both are great and both have their value. But it's that ability to be like, yes, and I'll figure out the team that makes this happen, or I'll figure out the person I need to bring along for this, or how to do it, or whatever. Has like been the only reason I've figured out those next steps is just because I was willing to figure out the next steps.
Yeah.
Totally. It's funny. I feel like in a lot of ways, we're like Creative Club as a whole operates in a lot of similar ways as Handcar, and also a lot of different ways because we're not like a formal company.
Right.
And we are all just individual businesses that are generally working together on a lot of projects. So it's really cool to hear some of the more like structure that you guys have around that. Not that we're looking to create the same thing.
I don't think one is better than the other, really.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Me thinking about you saying that is like, that sounds kind of nice. Like, grass is always greener.
But there's like give and take. That's like we can learn stuff from each other and like apply it to like the
Yep.
things that we have created in our own unique ways.
Yep.
You know, likewise, there are things that we love about our setup. There are things that we would love to tweak as well and then continue improving. And I think it's just really cool to be able to come together and like pick and choose the things that work best from the other side.
Serve you
and
most,
then just like you said this entire time, it's like it's all about like treating people well and like always growing and learning and listening and just getting better at the things that we're doing. And this is a really great way to do that on kind of like two sides of the coin.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's a blast. Do this all afternoon.
Dude. Yeah, you don't need to go back to Detroit.
No, my wife and kids are somewhere in the city. They're fine. They're
Our
wandering.
documentary is 7 hours long. So
Okay,
you
cool.
need to carve out the rest of the day.
Yeah, I'll let them know.
Yeah, cool.
Turn my phone off. Do not disturb.
I'm in the middle of the movie, babe. I can't do this right now.
3 hours in.
He's still running, babe.
He's still
This running
running.
sequence is 2 hours. They filmed the entire
whole
marathon.
marathon.
There's no
From
music,
start to
and it's
end.
just his breathing. It's really uncomfortable.
I can't wait. I honestly can't wait.
We did. I mean, you say that as a joke. You guys kind of did almost continuously record 15 miles of his race.
Yeah, it was so unnecessary. we used
the
like
hindsight.
a minute and a half of that footage.
Hindsight is 2020.
Oh boy, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
We were making a totally different movie at that point. in
15
time.
terabytes later.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for being here.
Sincerely.
It was
Thank you guys.
Such a great
It's been
conversation.
a blast.
Yeah.
Love your city. Love to hang out and see what you guys are building here. It's just so cool to see all that's grown. Even since I've been paying attention to Gene for a few years and like watching how that has grown in this new space, and you guys are killing it. So it's
Thanks,
just
man.
it's so fun to watch.
Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. If you guys enjoyed the show and enjoyed Jesse as a guest, please check out Handcar. They'll be linked in the description below. Go check out the work that they're doing. Maybe just like the last podcast you were on, this will also provide another great lead. So if anyone's interested in working with
It's
Handcar,
just Jesse at handcar.co. You can reach out to me there. Bring all of your gold and rupees.
please go check him out.
It's the only reason why I'm on this podcast.
That and watching the doc.
We need warm leads and a hot documentary. It's going to be great. Thank you all for being here, for listening. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any podcast distributor, please leave a rating there and a review. We'd really appreciate that. And if you're watching this on YouTube right now in our cool, fun little 4-person multicam setup,
Like and subscribe.
video in the channel. We love you all. Appreciate you very much. Thank you again, Jesse, for being here.
Thank you.
And we will see you in the next episode.
Go team.
Go team.
Go Lions.
The Lions.
Go Lions. Go Lions.
Go Bears.
Go Lions. Go Lions.